Hey, welcome to the 460th episode of Just Shoot It, a podcast about filmmaking, screenwriting, and directing. This episode is brought to you by patron Devin Ferguson. I'm Matt Enlow.
And I'm Warren Kaplan. And today we have a fellow art class director. His name is Daniel Russell. He is a music video director, a commercial director. We find out at the very end that he's also just directed a unique type of episodic show that just came out. And he was really fun to talk to. I just met him actually a few days ago. And I had forgotten, I'd heard about him that he worked with Dave Meyers. And for those that don't know, Dave Meyers is like super famous music video director, like Kendrick Lamar. I mean, he
maybe like the most successful of all time, specifically in music videos. Like,
yeah. And he's like literally like Taylor Swift's like biggest music videos, Sabrina Carpenter, Espresso. He directed that. And he also directs like 30 commercials a year on top of that. He's with Radical Media, and he is just like a powerhouse filmmaker.
Yeah, it's really cool.
He's done the thing that we all dream of, which is he's built like a little pod of people that get him, that understand him, that are inspired by him, that he can teach, that help him, you know, pull images and write treatments. And he's just, he's hiring people to make himself more efficient, but in doing so, he's creating all these like very talented other filmmakers. And Daniel is like a perfect example of that. Daniel has directed music videos with like Justin Timberlake and Jason Derulo and commercials for Samsung and Pepsi and all sorts of awesome things. But what's interesting about him is, and we tell the story about how Art Class hired like a BTS crew to, and Art Class is, by the way, the commercial production company that I'm on the roster of. They're the ones that helped me get commercial directing jobs. They had a shoot yesterday and they brought in all the LA based directors to do a little behind the scenes promotion video where they interviewed each director. And what I did at the beginning of the interview is I brought some Magic Mind. Well, I did. I wore my Just Shoot It hat and I brought some Magic Mind, and I was like, have you guys heard of Magic Mind? And there's two people, the interviewer and the camera guy. And the camera guy's, yeah, I've seen that at the store. And I was like, I'm trying to figure out like, if I drink this right now, if it'll make my interview better. Do you guys think I should just, slam it right now and then do the interview? Or should I do half the interview, then slam it and see if the second half of the interview...
see if it's better? Yeah. Yeah, just a little A/B testing.
Yeah. And they're like, well, probably just, want to start off good. So I just drank it and then I did the interview and I think it was pretty good. I mean, at the end, the interviewer and the camera operator were both like, yeah, it seems like you have a podcast. Like you've answered these questions about what lesson have you learned on set, or they asked me this. Let me ask you one question. They asked me that's pretty hard to answer. What's a catchphrase of yours that you say on set a lot?
Oh, easy. Actually, I'm surprised I don't have a t-shirt that says
moving on.
Pencils down. Yeah.
Oh, pencils down. It's very academic. And that like we're going to shoot. I feel good about the frame.
Yeah. So maybe a little bit worse than that, honestly. It means, hey, everyone, I know you could all spend a little bit more time making it better and improving it, but we're shooting right now.
Yeah.
Pencils down. Right. Like the SATs, right?
Yeah.
Like, you could keep going and you probably get a couple more right. Your score would go up, but we are out of time. So let's roll.
That's funny. Mine is a little bit meaner even than that, believe it or not, which mine is the thing I find myself saying the most often on set is, what are we waiting for? Okay, why are we not shooting right now? What are we waiting for?
I've adjusted that to who's not ready, which is
more of a blame game type of thing.
Yeah, no, it's not meant to be. It's a genuine question. I honestly mostly get annoyed when people don't say, but if someone's like me, I'm like, great, then I know why we're not shooting. Do your thing, finish it up. Or I can say pencils down. But like, it's the same thing as what are we waiting on? But like, a slightly more positive version of that.
Yeah. And for me, I never say it mean, but I'm just like, hey, can we shoot or are we waiting for something? Like, what are we waiting for? Yeah. If someone says, hold on a second, I want to know like, oh, are you just changing a battery on the camera? Or do you need to scrape some paint off of a surface that looks weird? Or you're steaming a towel that is wrinkled? One of them is going to take 5 minutes.
That I don't care about. Yeah.
Yeah. But also I want to know if I have 5 minutes, I'm going to go to the restroom or crafty or figure out the next shot, look at the next thing. But if it's 2 seconds, so I just, as a director, I really want to know how many seconds between now and when we're shooting,
Yeah, agreed.
But so the Magic Mind, I do believe helped me through the interview. I definitely was very energized and as you know, and listeners can maybe tell from my voice, I do have the flu today. Every single kid in my son's class had the flu, and I was hoping I got around it. And you asked me if I got the flu shot. I did not, but it was on my to-do list for like months. So I hope that counts for something. You're shaking your head no.
I mean, everyone, get your flu shots, right? As freelancer, actually who really convinced me to get a flu shot way back in the day? John August. John August is the flu shot guy. He was like, what if I told you as a freelancer that you could spend 20 minutes making sure that you don't have to take weeks off, or maybe even have to go to the hospital every single year? Because the flu, when you get the flu, you're doing a great job, Oren. But if you get it bad, it sucks, man. The flu.
Oh no,
the flu kills like so many people every year, right? It's like a serious thing that we just kind of like shrug our shoulders at. But if you can just kind of get a shot that makes it so much easier to weather, that tends to be worth it, I would say, and also helps the rest of the population as well. So not to shame you, Oren, but
and I'm sure everyone knows about this, but you know that the flu is the Spanish flu, and it did not exist before the Spanish flu.
I don't think I knew that, actually.
Like in the way that COVID is now a thing that just exists, like the flu did not exist before the Spanish flu. It's just the annual thing.
That's wild. Yeah, I did not know that. Well,
how's your Magic Mind? Oh, I saw you begging them to send you more.
It's on its way, and I'm so excited. But what I'm interested in, Oren, is that I think we're kind of becoming inadvertently two different use cases. You're like kind of in that like break in case of emergency, or even like a social hack is when you're deciding to have your magic mind. Whereas I anticipate that I'll still go back to my morning ritual of like every morning, have some coffee, sit down with a notebook, have a magic mind.
Yeah. So, because you need focus in the morning. I need it. I like my mornings like, make lunches, take the kids to school, listen to a podcast, exercise. And I don't want to waste my focused brain on that stuff.
The hour and a half before my kid is awake, in best case scenario, that's when I'm getting, that's my me time, basically. So I'm going to spend that magic mind on that me time, and then write some emails at 4:00 p.m. or whatever.
Yeah. Well, what's funny is my producer friend, he's the one that convinced me. He's like, you don't actually have to take it every day. You can just take it whenever you need. And then today I talked to him. He's like, yeah, I took it this morning. I've been taking it every morning. He's like, this morning I really needed it.
I mean, we're not looking at the brief right now, but there is that thing of like, it's meant to compound. It's meant to have cumulative effects. So, there's that to it as well.
But it has all those things. Ashwagandha, that's the one I remember from the lion's mane.
Lion's mane.
Yeah, it's cool. Yeah. And I'm the taste has really grown on me. It's kind of like a citrusy green drink.
Yeah.
So,
in a lot of their ads, they show it like someone splashing it over milk or something. They just shoot it as a shot.
Yeah, me too. Anyhow, if you want to try it out, you can go to magicmind.com/shootitjan, JAN, like January, and you'll get 45% off your first order. Potentially more than your first order? I don't know. Yeah, but check it out. I think, how many do you get? 15 or 30 when you first order?
It depends. I think
depends how many you order.
Depends on you want. Yeah, you can get 15 or 30. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we got ours. We are paid in Magic Mind, so we got 15 to start. And Matt instantly was like, "I need another 15."
Come on, let's go.
Because they are making us feel focused and feel good, and anything that you can kind of add to your routine that just tweaks your day to be a little bit more efficient or better. I think is a nice to have, and it's really easy to do some Magic Mind. So, hey, that's it. I'm not going to say Magic Mind again. The rest of this.
Well, this was a Magic Mind meld, and you can read my Magic Mind as we move into the other thing I'm going to plug, which is our Patreon. Patreon.com/JustShootItPod is a place where you can throw us a buck or two to keep the show going. That's how we pay our editor, Kevin. And it's a great way to show your support.
And if you feel like you get anything out of this show, I mean, obviously there's a lot of rambling, especially for me. Obviously, you have to listen to it at 2x speed in order to get through our long conversations.
Yeah.
Make it a 45-minute episode. But if you, after all that, feel like you got a tidbit that helped you on a job, helped you get a job, helped you come up with a cooler shot or cast someone better or do a fun performance thing or decide to move to LA, feel free to show your thanks by signing up for our Patreon. We really do appreciate it. And did I tell you about this hats thing that like I wear my hat a lot and everyone's like, I need one of those hats. Why don't I have one of those hats? I think we should get more
the
hats.
Yeah.
And I think we should sell them at cost, which is actually kind of a lot, including shipping, probably like $20. But email us or DM us at justshootitbot or justshootitbot@gmail.com if a Just Shoot It hat is something that you would like.
Yeah.
I do think that Just Shoot It is a similar way to say both of our catchphrases on set.
Yeah.
And so if you got a Just Shoot It hat, you just point to your hat and say, hey, let's pencils down, stop waiting for stuff. Let's just shoot it.
Yep.
And so let us know if like 20 people maybe say they're interested in Just Shoot It hats, maybe I think we have to order like 100 of them or something.
Yeah.
Which is why, but everyone in my circle is like, hey, give me that swag.
Yeah. And you're like, excuse me? Yeah. So
I'm like, this is my only hat I have. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. I think we have like the last two.
Yeah. I remember when I had to mail one that I'd worn twice because we were out.
We didn't tell anyone we did that though. So
no, but I had very clean hair on both those days.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk to Daniel Russell.
Have you ever heard the saying that you shouldn't trust a person with two first names?
I don't think I've heard that too much because I do have two first names. But
that's a rude thing to say to someone. Is that what you're saying, Daniel?
No, I'm saying it makes a lot of sense. And I think people are saying it behind my back.
Yeah, gotcha. Cool. Yeah, I feel like my wife and I joke about that all the time, but I don't know how common of a saying that is.
Like George Michael and...
Yeah.
I mean, it really leads to a bunch of nicknames. So people will just call me Russell. They'll go straight to Daniel. I mean, I never know what's coming. It's, it's really a struggle in a lot of ways having two first names, but we push through
the prejudice that you're a victim to all the time.
The unspoken prejudice, but
we're spoken in the case of this podcast, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Does anyone call you the doctor?
I did get doc. I like that one a lot, even though I am not a certified medical professional. I have to make that very clear.
You are a DR.
Yeah, I am a DR. I'm good with Dan. Some people call me Dan, but like I have a big red line in the sand when it comes to Danny. Like I'm not a Danny.
No,
Danny. We'll let you know.
Okay.
So but otherwise I'm pretty open. Russie. I mean, I've gotten it all.
Yeah.
Cool.
I'll say this.
Cleared that up. I think we're good.
No, we're good. I do want to explain. Man, so good. Really insightful. Great stuff, Doc. I call my doctors Doc now, and I think weird. They like it.
Oh, I'm sure they do.
Yeah.
I mean, it's such a power. Yeah.
Yeah, like funny.
Hey, I say, "What's up, Doc?" No, it's just my back hurts, Doc. It's a little charming. I think it took me a long time. It took me 40 years to get up the nerve to start calling doctors Doc. But
I feel like they'll shoot you straight if you call them Doc.
Yeah,
they'll be like, "What did you say?" Oh yeah, let me get all that other stuff I said was bullshit. Let's get straight to what's really happening.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So Daniel, did you do the interview yesterday, the art class thing?
I did.
So
this is sorry. This is like my second podcast, and that was like probably my first interview that was on camera. And yesterday? I did it with this like young gung-ho YouTube filmmaker. And it was fine. It was in my apartment, which was a mess. And for like years, when you Googled my name, that was the first thing that came up. And I was like, oh no. But yeah, so excited to do this one. But yeah, what did you think about the interview yesterday?
Wait, sorry, set the table for us. What interview are you guys referring to?
So what happened is Vince Pione, who owns Art Class, a past guest on the podcast, another talented director. I think he directed a Super Bowl commercial like a couple weeks ago, and they had a BTS crew there because it's a Super Bowl commercial. I assume you kind of just have to have a behind the scenes crew on stuff like that.
If you're going to spend that sort of money, you might as well get two spots for the price of one, right?
Yeah. Also, I assume I've never directed a Super Bowl commercial, but I assume once you have one, and I think Vince actually is doing two this year, you really want to get as much gas out of it, for the rest of the Q1 at least. Like, hey, like everyone's looking at the Super Bowl commercials, who directed them, what companies made them, etc.
The first word of my bio, as soon as I booked it, right?
Super Bowl director Matt Enlow.
Yeah, right.
Has also his first Super Bowl.
It's your Super Bowl as a director, you know what I mean? So I mean, Vince should have just hired the BTS crew for himself,
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
Last year, I directed a Super Bowl commercial, but it was like a commercial for the Super Bowl to watch the Super Bowl. It wasn't a commercial that aired during the Super Bowl. So
I think you can still use that intro. It's pretty close, you know.
It was a big game. It was a big game commercial.
A playoff style commercial, yeah.
But so what happened is, so they interviewed Vince and they interviewed the crew. I think, they did like a proper behind the scenes of a production in the same way they would do for a feature or TV show. Like what do you call them? Packages?
EPK.
EPK, yeah. An EPK for
an electronic press kit. But I think that might be pretty old fashioned to refer to it as an EPK. Yeah.
Right. But so I think the folks at art class were like, wow, that came out really good. Now we have these great sound bites from all the people that worked on this.
Oh,
and Vince had another shoot yesterday in LA, and they said, why don't we invite, while we have this BTS crew, let's just invite all the art class directors that live in LA.
Smart.
And just do a 1 hour interview of each one. Just so we have these sound bites if we want to cut a reel or show our directors or maybe make a little intro for one of them, we'll have that. So I thought it was interesting because it's definitely creating promotional material for a director. And Matt and I literally, probably just not on the podcast, but today talked for like an hour or two about promoting yourself and what the ways are and reaching out and posting things. I mean, we talk about that all the time. Like 95% of the work of a director, I believe, is getting work,
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that thing was so funny because, they started out, they're like, say your name, and I'm a director, and I sit up straight and I like lower my voice. I'm Daniel Russell, director at art class. And this is my story. And I'm like, that sounded terrible. And then I'm like, wait a second. This is going on Instagram. I'm like, is this like making the video? Should I be like, what up, man? Like, why did I bring I'm like, why am I not wearing mirror shades?
I did like 4 takes. Yeah. My first one was, hello, I'm Oren Kaplan and I'm a director at art class. And then by the last one, I was like channeling all the Instagram influencers. I was like, what's up, dudes? It's me, Oren Kaplan. I'm here, director at art class.
It's your boy.
Yeah. And then
come to set. Come on set.
I was like, I'm going on a monologue on Fincher, and I'm like, no one gives a crap about this. You know what I mean? Like, they just want to hear me say that was crazy. That's going to get the click. So it was interesting.
I do think quoting like filmmakers, like Cassie Brooks Bank has, she'll quote like Ridley Scott in an interview, and she'll say something really interesting, about like spectacle, or she'll quote Napoleon, or she'll quote someone, and it's a really useful quote. But in general, I think maybe because we have a podcast, I really try to speak about lessons I've learned that other people can apply to their own lives, and that's what I tried to do yesterday.
In the case of Cassie in particular, she has such a clear voice, and also she's been on the podcast before and like loves action movies. Like she loves like Gore Verbinski. Like Ridley Scott is maybe the highest brow person that she fucking loves Michael Bay. And so when she's dropping like a Michael Bay quote, it's charming and in voice and funny. And like, you don't hear as many Michael Bay quotes as you do, I don't know, David Lynch quotes.
Right. Or Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah, exactly. So like, so I think if it's a little bit off the beaten path, that's really fun. Like if I was like, oh, the Coen brothers say XYZ, everyone would be like, sure, dude, of course, bring them up again, So I think that's part of it as well.
I think it's exciting when people have like a strong point of view. Like one thing that she says, like the best he says is, I mean, it's basically what Robert Rodriguez says, which is like, get rid of the fucking tripod, Like I do not want to see sticks on set because the camera should be moving. Like always, which I know we disagree with this. I mean, Matt, especially, I think you're kind of do like a lot of dry comedy and stuff.
Sure. Well, love a tripod. I also hate framing handheld shots. Like, you know what I mean? Just like put it on sticks so we can all look at the frame together, guys. Drives me nuts. I'm
so guilty because I immediately brought up the Fincher quote about the camera being God and omnipotent. And, and also it's going through my head. I'm like, do I need to really drop like, Yorgos Lanthimos for like, some of my like deep cuts when I really just want to talk about Nolan and Fincher? It's like, how am I positioning myself here? And like, but like, here's my favorite director. He is, so.
They didn't ask me who my favorite director is, but they asked me what my favorite Super Bowl commercial was. And I kind of just said, pass.
Yeah. I don't know what I would say. My favorite Super Bowl commercial?
I told them about the type of commercial that I really like. Which is a commercial that messes with the medium. So you remember like 15 years ago, there was like an E-Trade commercial where it was just a monkey for 30 seconds, just like scratching its butt. Yeah. And then they go, we just spent $3 million to show you a monkey scratching its butt. Maybe you spend money better by going to E-Trade. Like,
do you guys remember the Tubi prank from like maybe 2 Super Bowls ago.
Was it the floating QR code? Was it that?
No. I think it was maybe the year before that, where it looks like you're watching the game, and then it looks as though someone is sitting on the remote, like the interface pops up and starts scrolling away.
Oh yeah.
And so like everyone is like, dude, who's got the remote? What's going on? That spot is really funny. That's pretty inspired.
Yeah, that's smart. And then last year there was that DoorDash spot. I'm pretty sure Mike Diva directed it, and I could be wrong about that, but I think he directed it. And it was like this 3D, it was like kind of a drone shot of a house in your backyard and things. And there was 3D text that the drone was flying past that had every item that was going to be advertised during the Super Bowl listed. And they said the first person who texts this exact, like sends a text to this phone number of this exact text, and it was like hundreds of words. We will DoorDash every single thing that's being advertised to them, like a Dodge Ram truck, you know, and like
that's dope.
Snuggle, whatever detergent. So I think that's to me what is exciting about the Super Bowl. It's the one event in America that you can kind of count on like a big percentage, like over 25% of Americans watching and being familiar with. And there's literally nothing else. So playing with that idea, like, hey, what if you did have 100 million people watching you live right now? What would you do? And so that's what interests me about Super Bowl commercials. Not like, oh, it's Patrick Stewart playing football with Sylvester Stallone, you know? It's cool.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, those are good.
But so I think, you know, that whole thing about promoting ourselves, I thought was interesting. And I thought something we could talk about, but maybe we could rewind a little bit, Daniel, because I just met you the other night for the first time. I've seen your work, and you've obviously worked with some insane artists like Justin Timberlake, and you worked with Jason Derulo. I've also worked with him. I think you got much more out of him than I did. Can we just start with like your journey onto how, like right now, obviously you still kind of, I think, are known as a music video director and doing this kind of high profile music videos, but you're also doing a lot of commercials. And, you know, I don't know if you do narrative stuff too, but I assume you probably dabble in that as well. So can you just tell us like how you went from film school, NYU?
From Virginia, went to NYU Film for 4 years. Didn't really learn anything, not gonna lie. Didn't really make that many connections. Did make a couple horrible student films.
Yeah, fast forward a little bit. I want to hear about, you're in Los Angeles, you're gigging around.
Yeah.
Tell us about that first break.
So I had like bus tables all summer, and I also registered my car for Uber. I had enough money to live for 6 months. I got an apartment. It was like, I think $600 a month. It was in a legal closet, but it had a bed. And
I lived in the closet too in San Francisco.
Yeah. I had about 6 months that I could go, because that was my whole goal moving out, was I need enough money to not immediately start driving Uber or working at a restaurant.
Sure.
And honestly, I had found a Rolodex of production companies that were shooting, and I was cold calling every single one, being like, hey, my name is Daniel Russell. I just graduated from NYU Film School. I will drive a van for $10. Down the list. Call us back in 2 weeks. Call us back in 3 weeks. You know.
Sorry, you found an index of all productions that are currently going?
Pretty much.
Like a MLA type of?
Yeah, I don't remember exactly where I found it, but it was something, and it had the production companies, and I would just Google the production companies. And I would just call.
We're out, but there is a website where you can just kind of basically see everything that's shooting right now.
Yeah, it used to be like in the magazines, right?
Yeah, and now it's you have to pay for it, but also like if you've got a friend who's like, yeah, I'll copy and paste it and send it to you. And
it was one of those deals.
Yeah.
I got put on by somebody at an agency, and I had the list, and I was just calling everybody, but no one really gave me a job. And then one day I was thinking about going for a hike, and I just said, why don't I like check around a little bit more? And there's actually it's funny to say, this website called the Anonymous Production Assistant, which gives anonymous tips on how to become a production assistant in LA. And they had job postings that they filtered from Variety and from other places. And it just so happened on that day, I didn't decide to go on the hike, that they had reposted a job from a Variety posting or Hollywood Reporter or something, assistant to veteran music video director. And so I cold applied. I just sent an email with resume, wrote up a cover letter, and I get an email back saying I'd been selected to interview. It turns out I was one of like 25. And I saw the name at the bottom, and it was Dave Meyers. And like being from Virginia, being a huge Missy fan, like I knew immediately who he was. And I was like, this is not a porn situation. Like this guy's the fucking goat. And like,
but he does shoot sexy shit.
Yeah, he does. So pretty random, honestly, like pretty wild, but just pursuing, but it was a cold call situation. That led me to an interview, 1 of 5 with Dave, and he was in like Prague or something. Like
Wait, do you know how you got to be down? How'd you get to be 1 of 5?
I interviewed with his assistant first, and then there was like a cut down to 5. I don't know what I did in that interview, but yeah, I mean, I heard that he was pretty much going with somebody else, but I'm very proud of this. So I hope don't sound like I'm bragging, but we did the call. We talked about Missy. We talked about films, like all your normal stuff. And just as we're getting off, I just sort of like, I said, hey, I just want you to know this. Like, I know I don't have any experience, but like, if you hire me, like, I will not sleep. I will work harder than any of these other people. And yeah, he held me to that promise. I barely slept for 2.5 years. So, but it was definitely worth it. It was definitely worth it.
Killer. That's great, man. That's so good.
Did you ask at all what the job entailed?
I was down for whatever, man. Luckily, like, so obviously I was his assistant, but pretty quickly we would be talking about films and ideas. And so I started building pitch decks for all of he had like 50 TV show and movie ideas, and I was just cranking them out like one a week. And then one day,
does he live in LA? I don't know why I thought he lives in New York.
Yeah, his house tragically burned out in the Palisades. So yeah, but he's still in LA as of now, at least.
So were you in the room with him?
Yeah, I was at Radical. This is pre-COVID, so I was in the office like 9 to 6 every day, and then working nights and a lot of weekends too.
So can you give us like a scenario? Like he's like, I have an idea, like furries. That's a thing, right? TV show. Daniel, go dramedy.
Yeah. So it always started the same way, title page that expressed the tone. What's the poster going to be? References. So what kind of references does the show like want to be, like tonally or comedically or whatever the genre was? Then I would build out templates. So there'd be synopsis pages, logline pages, and then we'd get into character breakdowns.
And did you know any of this?
Set pieces.
Or are you learning on the job? Like this template, this idea, right? Like...
Yeah, I mean, obviously I had an understanding of character synopsis, things that I had, learned in film school. But what Dave taught me faster than ever was how to sell ideas. And that was seeing his commercial treatments, seeing his music video treatments, and then seeing how he was packaging these ideas. We didn't have scripts for these ideas. He'd be like, oh yeah, maybe the third act should be like this. And then I'd be like, okay, And then like, what are the set pieces? That was a huge thing.
So give us those nuggets, man. What do you feel like? I can't believe I'm saying this before Oren does.
No.
Like what are the taking a step out of like the TV stuff? Like what'd you learn from Dave on how to sell a commercial idea or any idea? Like what?
Yeah, Dave taught me so many things, for music videos, he would always it would just start with simple things like, have you watched every single music video that the artist has done? Do you know where they've been? Do you know what works for them? Do you know where they are right now? And do you know where they're going? Do you know, and how, and why should they go there? And how am I going to explain to them that this is where they should go? Because they're a brand too, obviously a very opinionated one. So that was, a little bit, he always wanted to stand out. So, as you can tell in his work, it was always about what's the big idea, both conceptually, but also what are the, the moments that, will become gifts. He didn't really say it like that, but
sure.
Like what are the standout visuals? What are we going to hang our hat on?
Producer, it's funny because I've talked about this on the podcast before, but my producer friend, Matt Lancaster, was like telling me how he works with these really great commercial directors, and they are thinking, what is the thumbnail for this spot on my website? And even if it's not, even if the client and agency don't want it, like they have to shoot it because that's like what is going to identify that. And I feel like that's kind of saying the same thing, right? Like, what's the gift that people are going to be making music video?
And I think that, like, to Daniel, your point of like, he maybe wasn't thinking in terms of like literally a GIF or literally a thumbnail, but the philosophy stays true no matter what. Like, it's the same thing as like, what are people going to be talking about at the end of the movie and, in front of the theater? What are those things, like you said, you hang your hat on one of those big ideas that have so much impact that they can't be ignored, right? And so if you don't have that, then you probably don't get the job, right?
And sometimes it was not the thing that we were expecting at all. You know what I mean? Sometimes we would think it would be one thing, and then it would be something that we almost didn't really expect. And that's, the cool power of the internet. But also, his philosophy definitely was, overload, and then things will stick out, and sometimes that works really well, and sometimes it can be a little jumbled, but obviously he's had a lot of success with it. And then commercials, he'd just always say, I want to completely rewrite their idea. He's like,
awesome.
And he'd be like, fuck their script.
Yeah.
What do we want to do? Unless it was something really simple, but and that's what he taught me a lot about. Like, I mean, two things, like when I was trying to get into videos, he was like, you need to make a video that the artist that you want is going to be like, oh, I want that. Right. So like, even just thinking that way, like, oh man, I'm trying to shoot Migos videos. Like what's going to get the Migos attention, because that was how he got some of his early success. And then with commercials, just, it's so hard to like go against, what has been approved and to try to reconcept their idea with branding and everything. And obviously you don't always do it like 100, but I think his philosophy in a lot of ways, and something I've learned from him, was like, it's better to have the treatment that stands out and makes them like kind of turn their heads, and maybe you have to pull back later, but I think that helps separate a lot of his work, and that's something that I try to do in my commercial treatments as well.
Yeah, so I think that's I think that's kind of a perfect pivot, and maybe Oren will circle back to your question, because I do want to talk about you specifically, Daniel. If I was driving along and listening to this podcast, I would be like, well, of course Dave Meyers can rewrite the concept. He's Dave Meyers, of course, right? But do you feel like in your own work, Daniel, you're able to kind of turn things on its head? How effective do you feel like it's been in taking that philosophy and applying it to your own work as you're breaking into commercials and, building a career?
I definitely struggle with it a lot, like understanding what the line is. And I try to get that out of the call. For me, right now I'm at a stage where I feel like I try to keep their brief, but I try to bring a whole different sort of take or style onto it. And that's been successful. I haven't totally thrown out scripts yet, but
Sure.
I like to do things like I'll treat their whole script, and then I'll make a page that's like, hey, you're probably not going to like this, but and throw some things in there. Do you say it like that,
actually? Like,
kind of, yeah. I mean, maybe a little more eloquently, but hey, just in case, like, you want to light a bike on fire.
Here's some wild card ideas, or like, here's a few curveballs. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. And that way they can just delete the page if they don't like it, or if they go, oh, and I'm like, let's do it. Let's light that bike on fire. It's almost like
a little dare. I can remember a handful of times in meetings just being like, oh, well, you wouldn't like this idea.
Yeah.
And that's when the lean in moment of like, no, tell me the idea you don't want to tell me.
Right. Yeah. And it also depends so much on like the creative team, and like, as a new director, these are almost all my first meetings. These aren't repeat clients. So we don't have that full trust yet. And so obviously, like, when you do get really good creatives and they come back, then I feel like you can go wild with it. You also sometimes, I think, get a sense how passionate the creatives are about their own idea, like whether they really love it or whether like they don't fucking even know what they wrote. And so that also,
or what they love about their idea.
Yeah. Or what they love about their idea. That's a great one.
And what they're not sure. I pitched on this thing last year. It was this super slow-mo kid's birthday party, and like a goat crashes into a table and this cake explodes and everything is shot. It was supposed to be a oneer. Ended up not being a oneer, of course, but shot super slow-mo. And just in the pitch, I pitched the whole thing, and I was like, by the way, I thought just one other way you could do this is just play the whole thing in reverse, right? We start with like cake all over the place, goats going crazy, animals, bounce houses exploding, and just like we rewind it. And because it was about this banking app that just kind of, when everything else has gone to shit in your life, like at least you can rely on your banking app. And I was like, what if we just played it did your whole spot, but just in reverse to show, and we just end with the phone screen. And the creative director's like, he's like, God, first of all, I cannot believe I did not think of that. Second of all, that's really great. Third of all, please remove that from the treatment. We do not want the client to see this.
The good thing about the reverse is, that's pretty easy to do in post,
I was like, we could shoot it the exact same way, Yeah. But it is funny to be like, oh, that idea we love your idea, but you're opening up a little bit of a can of worms with the client it obviously depends on a client. A bank client has probably gone through 8,000 legal approvals.
Yeah, sure.
Yes.
But a music video is probably like on a whim, Justin Timberlake can be like, fuck yeah, let's do this different thing.
Oh yeah, and I mean that's a whole another thing. Like shooting celebrities for commercials too. It's like what a lot of people don't realize. Like obviously there's a contract involved, but like they might not be aware of the creative, and they might not want to do something. And if they don't want to do it, they're not going to do it.
They're
And,
certainly not aware of the creative.
No.
No matter how many times people have been like, "Oh, so and so loves it. They're so in. They love it. It's great. They hear their notes, etc." Every single time they show up and they're like, "What are we doing?" What?
And they're like, "I'm not wearing that."
Yeah.
When I was shooting Timberlake, he walks out to the set. I'm like, "Yeah, so you're gonna be doing this. You're here."
Sure.
And he just goes, "What the hell is this? I don't want to do this." And I was like, and he was like, "No, I'm just kidding, man. Come on, it's gonna be a great day."
That's good.
But he got me. I think I didn't have to go change my underwear. I was like, "What?"
He knew his power.
That's really funny.
Oh man,
that makes me like him so much more. Actually, that's a really good joke.
He was an absolute pleasure. Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So I guess back to Matt's question: how did you kind of separate and start your own career?
Yeah, so I've been writing treatments for 2.5 years.
Oh wait, let me just ask. And I know I talk about treatments way too much, but it's like my bread and butter. Of the 3 things that you need to do to win a job: 1, show references like visuals; 2, write interesting words and ideas; and 3, get on a call and pitch them. What do you like from what you've learned over the years? What's the most important one? Because I think something you said about the way you even structure your pitches, like even TV pitches, starting with images.
Starting with references is interesting to me for sure.
Like 15 years ago, we would just be like, here's the premise, the log line. It would just be a page of text,
Yeah.
I think that whole thing has changed into like nobody even.
Yeah. No, I'm jealous. I've heard stories about back in the day, like a 1-page doc and you book the job, and now we're doing 35-page things. I mean, images sell a tone and moving images, and I think that's the first thing everybody sees, and sometimes people don't have time to read everything, so they might not read every single word in your production design paragraph, but they sure as hell are going to look at the pictures and process it and decide whether they like or don't like it very, very quickly. So that's hugely important to me, just from a base. I mean, this comes from music videos, but most of hip hop artists do not read a single word that you write. They're only looking at the images. So the images better be cool, and they better make sense to them, and they better be able to see themselves in that. And I think it's similar for brands to a certain extent. Now they'll read everything, but it's the first thing you see. If you see some terrible fucking images, and you're like, "Oh, I don't want it to look like that." It's going to take a lot of work in the text, I think, to help you.
They'll read everything for sure. But also, they'll read your stuff and all the other director's stuff. And then when they're trying to make their decision, kind of flip through things again.
And they won't remember who wrote what.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So it's kind of like those images are jogging their memory still either way. And I also don't know that they all read everything.
Right. And I really do believe that they do read it all. But like, what is the first reaction? Right. They see your cover page, they see your first few pages, and you can really put them in an exciting world or a very funny world, or, you can really establish a tone there. And I think that is just like a visceral human reaction that might influence how they feel about your text. Text is obviously extremely important. Like, it's the most important thing to me, because like, I need to know that's where I figure everything out. Like, the images, are abstract, but the text and writing the script out the way I'm going to shoot it is the hardest and most important part, sort of, for me. And that also helps the call when I know exactly what we're going to do, and it's just not like super, super vague. But then, I think the call is important too, because like that's really when, you have to sell the vision, because they might not understand what you wrote, even if it's pretty clear to you. Yeah. So anyway, you guys know this, but
when you're pitching music videos, do you ever use images of other artists? Like, do you ever pull from references from other music videos, or do you like avoid that as much as humanly possible?
Not. The only reason I don't is because, generally speaking, I'll do it for older references, but nobody wants to see like, oh, I'm gonna like copy them. Like, oh, here's another rapper in front of a Hummer, and you want me to be in front of a Hummer. You know what I mean? But so I'm very sensitive.
It's been so long since I've thought about music videos. In commercials, it's not that big a deal to like pull the images from other commercials. It's like, okay, yeah, it's a kitchen with an island, and maybe you Photoshop someone out, or you crop them out, or you put in your piece of talent there if it's a really important moment or something. But in music videos, it's so much more stylized. Like, where are you pulling your references from? Like, walk us through, like, it's not like you're just hopping onto Shot Deck, or are you? Maybe I'm putting words.
I mean, Shot Deck is just one of the tools, but it's a great tool. I mean, if you're trying to find something specific, like the keywords that you can type in there are crazy. I mean, obviously.
But are you pulling from movies? Are you pulling from music videos? You're pulling from commercials or fine art, or all of the above?
I'll reference music videos. I'll watch a lot of music videos, but I'll almost rarely, unless we're like specifically referencing like a 90s video and a production style, like something like that. Well, and it's like very distant from the artist, and I'm not dealing with a legacy artist. Would I ever pull from classic or new music videos, certainly, or the artist's previous work? I don't want to make it look like they're doing the same thing that they've already done. For me, like where I really found interesting images was like really studying fashion photography, like Helmut Newton, like Richard Serra, like all those guys, like really going through their archives, and then like I got really into like Vice had incredible images of the gnarliest stuff you ever seen, and then like weird fashion magazines like Hunger and stuff would always have really edgy, but like getting to know Rankin, getting to know Stephen Meisel, like seeing all of their best images, pulling all those best images, kind of knowing what those certain styles are. Sometimes like I was able to sort of, go back to some of those sort of moments, but a lot of fashion. And then, a lot of, depending on the job, if, we're shooting in Cuba and like, we want it to be super authentic, then I'm going through every street photographer Cuba's ever put out. And, like, so a lot of photographers, but also like a lot of movie references, but it just depends whether it's a more narrative driven sort of piece or whether it's really about tone. And like, then you're just looking for like inspirations for sets and stuff like that and characters.
I love that. Years ago when I was like a sophomore in college, I cold called the Directors Bureau and was their intern for a few years. But the first thing that they had me do is Roman Coppola would go to the library and he would just get stacks and stacks of art books, like all the visual references that you're describing, Daniel. And then he'd just go and like put sticky notes in, right? This is like this is long ago enough that like we all just got high-speed internet. So like the idea of having all of this at your disposal wasn't really the thing. It was like, he grew up in an era where like, yeah, you just needed to have every Look magazine or whatever, or have a friend who had all that stuff. So literally my job was I was in the basement of HKM and I would just go through each book and I would find all of the sticky notes and I would scan those images for him. And I did that for weeks.
Yeah, I mean,
now people can access them with one type into a bar.
But it's interesting because it was a little bit of opposite full circle moment for me, because obviously I started just on the internet, and then when like I would hear stories about, obviously, like I was at Radical at the time, there were books everywhere. But it was during the pandemic. I remember I was like just looking for a place to go, like work, and I went to the West Hollywood Library and I stumbled upon their what do you call them? Super large book section. And they just had rows.
Like coffee table book?
Yeah, it was like coffee table books, but even bigger. And they just had so many. And I was like pulling some of my favorite, like there was like whole sections on fashion, all these things. And I was looking through them and they were images that I had never found online. And I felt like I had trolled these people's like every single image that one of them had ever shot. And then here I am like looking at one of their books that like wasn't their best work, but I'm finding images that, as far as I know, do not exist on the internet. Tried back searching, tried typing them in, like I can't find it anywhere. So then I bought like 45 books during COVID and like it was just going through all of them.
Sure. Yeah.
And so it is interesting, but they can come from anywhere. But yeah, I think the fashion photography and the images are just a little bit easier for the treatments, but obviously like movies and like so many other things like inspire. And now honestly, it's I mean, you can go on Instagram and find the craziest stuff, man. But like you have to dig. You have to really dig. I had found this crazy thing called the Wall of Death in India, where they do these like circus rides, but they got people hanging out the car, like smoking, like grabbing cash from people, and like they do them in circuses. But the one in India was so
with
nuts.
The motorcycles and the balls.
Yeah. And they do it in these circuses in the States, but the one in India was just so raw and like crazy. And I had pitched it to like 3 or 4 artists, but no one was going to this fucking Indian circus. And then somebody, I don't remember the artist's name, dropped that video, and it was like my favorite video of last year. It was so good. It was just, you know,
But
you're
you didn't direct it.
No, I didn't direct it, but like it was just one of those things I found.
It was in the air,
digging,
right? Like
just digging. Yeah. It was like on
cool.
Nowness, like 2012,
Right.
you know? And that's honestly like one of the things, I don't miss it, but that I'm trying to get back into the habit too. Like, you know, there was a time where I was like literally pulling for 10 hours a day images, and I still pull a lot, but nothing like that, you know, because it takes a long time.
Sure. Yeah.
So I guess just kind of going back to like you kind of separating from Radical Media and starting your own career. Did they rep you, or how did you start getting the opportunity to pitch?
Yeah. So luckily, like we had been working with Kendrick a lot, and so I knew Dave Free, his creative director partner. And like I was around on all those shoots and like helped write the treatment for a lot of them. And so anyway, I had shot some videos for some friends, like some $10 videos, like literally $10, and that were that good. But he gave me a chance with like one of the like earliest artists, sir, and like it's like a $5,000 budget, and I like write. You remember that movie Sunset Boulevard?
Sure.
When she's
classic.
He's floating in the pool at the beginning. So that was like my whole pitch, was that he had been shot by this chick and he was floating in the pool. So I got $5,000 and I'm trying to shoot underwater in this pool.
Sure. Wait, so he's dead, floating, and you're shooting up. And
and then you kind of see the story that happens. But anyway, my DP agreed to do it for basically nothing because he wanted underwater reel. The whole thing was out of focus. But it conceptually was good.
Wait. I'm curious. What was the rig like? Like, how were you shooting underwater?
He was on a tank and he had a rig for his body, but he just really didn't have very much experience doing the underwater. He had just been scuba certified. And I'm not sure whether he couldn't tell whether it was out of focus or whether it was actually the bubbles from he was breathing out and they were like crossing the lens. But it was just, I mean, it was salvageable, but it was like, I mean, if we're so cheap, I don't even have an underwater monitor. So I'm like,
sure,
roll the scan. Like, one of these will be in focus, you know? And he's like, I think it's in focus. It's probably probably didn't put shampoo in his like goggles. Like he probably can't even see like where he's pointing, you know? It was just, but that went well. And then this rep, Jamie Rabineau at the time, I reached out to her and she wasn't ready to
I know Jamie Rabineau.
Yeah. She wasn't ready to take me on.
Yeah, I worked with Dave. I just shot this.
Well,
video.
she repped Dave, so I knew her. She's like, I'm not ready to take you on, but hey, there's this girl Emily at Revor who works with a lot of young up and coming directors. You should reach out to her. So I sent her the video. I like sort of pitched myself, and from there I got like a 15K video for a DJ. I got a 30K video for a female EDM artist. She loved that. I got a 40K video.
And what's your hit rate? Like, how many pitches are you writing? How many are booking?
Probably like at that time, like 10%, 20%.
Sure. Yeah.
On the lower budget stuff, it's actually higher because if you say you'll do it for 10K, then they're like, all right, it can't be that bad. We're not going to lose that much money on this.
Yeah, the risk isn't that great, right? Yeah.
But I lost a lot. And yeah, so I started, once I got a little bit of momentum, I sort of quit and I just said, I'm doing this full time. And
Emily, the rep?
So I was with Emily, and
were you with a production company?
I was doing everything through Free Enjoy. Nathan Scherer over at Free Enjoy also was producing all of Dave's videos. So I had some help, definitely. Nathan's amazing. But so when I quit, I have like another 6 months saved up, and I'm like, my buddy just bought this boat in the Virgin Islands, St. Thomas. And it was just after the hurricane. So he got this boat for like 10K. It had like a 4-foot hole in the side of it, but it could float. And he's like, dude, come on down. We'll sell to Carnival. I'm like, all right, I don't really have anything to do. Like, I'm not going to spend any money on this boat. So I send it down there He says it's going to be fixed. It's not fixed. Next thing I know, I'm doing fiberglass work on a boat in the middle of the ocean. Probably not the best thing to do. Definitely not the best thing to do. I was covered in fiberglass the first day. But I was like, man, I was like, when someone calls, they calls. But right now,
adventure calls, man. Yeah.
Yeah. And lo and behold, Dave Freed called me back, and it was like my first video with a budget for an artist named J-Rock. And so I shoot that down in Watts, and I get a call. I send the edit in. I get a call like 10 minutes later, and I'm like, oh, this is way too fast. I'm I'm in trouble. And they're like, I need you to be in Atlanta next Sunday. You're shooting the next one. And I was like,
yeah.
Okay, cool. Here we go.
Yeah, who was that?
A Top Dog, the owner of TE, Kendrick, and all their labels. He saw it. He liked it. He was sending me to Atlanta in 5 days. And it was kind of off to the races from there. Jamie ended up taking me on. And then really what did it for me was like, there were these guys that had this really weird, possibly shady project. It was a Michael Jackson tribute project. And they had permission from the estate, but it was going to be with Jason Derulo and these Korean boy bands. And it was very weird. But they said they had money and they said they had permission. And it was the kind of thing that I think she was like, well, this sounds like BS. So like, let Daniel pitch on it. I'm not going to waste my other director's times. And I book it. And the song was all about international like dance, like my Ethiopian girls, my London girls. And I was like, why don't I fly around the world and shoot dancers in each of these countries? That was the pitch, and they went for it. And then after that, I booked, Clout, Cardi B, Missy Elliott. I booked Missy Elliott shortly after that.
Can we ask like how much it costs to make a video like that, where you're flying all over the world and shooting
that
dancers?
One was like a little over 500.
Oh wow, that's like a legit budget.
Yeah,
no, you have casting people in every country finding
yes, service companies in every company. But I mean, I was flying coach, like middle seat at that time. I didn't care, you know what I mean? And
sure. Like I demand the middle seat. Like it's a 2-and-2 configuration, Daniel.
But that definitely bumped me up a little bit. Yeah. And the hotel in Ethiopia was pretty cheap.
Sure.
But
you're willing to get scrappy, but also like you're saying, just putting it on screen, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that video is like really cool. I was curious. There's a lot of really amazing dancing in it. Like, did you hire an American choreographer to choreograph like all the dancing across all these different countries? Yeah,
I hired this amazing choreographer, Daniel Polanco. She was actually in Omarion's Touch video. She was the lead in that. And I just really liked her work, and I really liked her enthusiasm. A lot of choreographers are so busy. And like the biggest thing about this one was I needed a choreographer who would choreograph. The whole like concept was that we were going to do the same choreography in 3 different continents. So I needed choreography that Derulo would like, that NCT 127 would be able to learn and do, and also that Lei Zhang would like and be able to learn and do. And then I also needed somebody who was willing to hook me up with local choreographers and dancers in London, in Jamaica, and all over. And she really just encapsulated that so well. So that was really the biggest thing. I mean, each of those artists, have their own choreographers. So there was a lot of sort of back and forth, but, my biggest thing that I was trying to express to her was all of my framing. I wanted to just be like narrow streets, like alleys and streets, like all over the world. And I wanted the camera to always be pulling back and us to always be moving forward. Mm-hmm. So like, that was really where the choreography jumped off from. And, she did an amazing job, like connecting me. Like, I mean, I had like a 3-time world champion breakdancer. And I remember when we were watching the edit together, she was like, you got to put him in more. And I was like, I don't have enough time. Like, I know, like, I like this stuff he's doing. It could have been the whole video, the stuff he was doing. He's like that big, but it's like, I only got time for like 1 shot, maybe 2. Like, there's a lot we got to get to. So yeah, that was really dope. And
do you have an idea, like for a video, which is, it's a montage of dancing, do you have an idea of how you're going to cut it while you're shooting it, or does it all kind of come together in post?
Yeah, I think the most important thing about shooting dance, I mean, there's so many different ways to shoot dance, and I'm always looking for new ways to shoot dance. But, I would say, a lot of people just use like a steady camera or whatever. But really what you want to be able to do and learn is like watching rehearsals and what are the cool moves, if everyone turns, then you know, just
you
like
need to be ready for it. Yeah.
you need to be right there for that turn.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's the same thing like in the script, like knowing when the beats change and when to go to a close up. You know what I mean? When they do something like this with their hands, it might look better at tight. Some moments look a lot better wider. Some moments look better, you know, pushing in or out. So it obviously comes together in the edit, but I think like picking the pieces and picking your angles to capture those pieces are really what makes, in my, like, you know, a classically shot, you know, choreographed piece, like really strong. If you're talking about like you're in a line, you're 5, 6, 7, 8 kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense. And, you know, it's funny, I haven't shot a ton of dance, but I did do some stuff with Ellen. We did like a lot of like flash mobs, right? And you like it, just in talking to you, I was like, oh, that's right. Like it kind of was coming back to me. There is that language that you have of like, you know, you say, okay, well, I need this is the big wide shot where the car pulls out and we reveal their parents or whatever. So like this has to be, let's get every single body that we've got and give us a big something with a ton of fanfare and like kind of a classic Hollywood feel or whatever. And that's enough for a good choreographer to be like, okay, well, let me show you something, right? Or you can say like, hey, I need to go from A to B because we you know, logistically need to get the camera to this spot for whatever reason. Like there's kind of just those basic building blocks, like you were saying, of like, oh, here's the framing and I always want this feeling of momentum of pulling back. So therefore you need to be dancing forward. So you don't have to be so prescriptive with like, you know, I want you to do this move and that move and all that. That's what the choreographer is there for. They know better than you do, right? Are there any other sort of fundamental aspects that you can think of that,
like if you're choreographing,
decode it for people a little bit, you know?
If you have like 10 people and you want them to not all be doing the same thing.
So first off, I mean, you know, like you can introduce story or elements, right? So if I suddenly give you guys brooms, you know, that's going to change the choreography. If people have brooms and half the people have fire hoses, that's also going to change the choreography. So you can put limitations or, you know, again, explaining from a story perspective or whether that just means the story or the choreography, where A to B needs to go, what elements are going to be dealt with. And you can say that without knowing exactly how you want the thing spun, and they're going to come back and give you ideas. I think when you look at choreography, you know, number 2 is you could send references and you can find the craziest shit you've ever seen in your entire life on TikTok. You know, you can say you want juking, you can say you want breaking, you can say you want these kind of things. But really, if you can find a video of someone, you know, like going crazy on trampoline sticks, you know, like, and you're like, this is the level of speed I want, or like, oh, just the way they're really so smooth here. You know, this is the style I'm looking for. That usually can help get people on the same page pretty quickly. And then when you're watching the choreography, I think the biggest thing is that you don't ever really want to tell the choreographer that you don't like something. What you want to talk about is the parts that you do like and how you can expand on those and how you can make more parts like that throughout the piece. So like there might only be one part you like, and it's that one part that everyone's doing something different. And you're like, I actually feel like this should happen like more often. Like I love this part, versus being like, I kind of hate the first half. You know what I mean? And so those are just some, you know, references, you know, explaining the story or what kind of props or things they can interact with, trying to explain the camera if it's important. And then really when you get the choreography back, like, you know, really talking about the things that you do like, you know, and that you like see more of and in more places. That's just sort of like some of the basics.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. And also, like, you know, we've been doing the show a long time. I don't think we've ever really talked about dance at all.
No,
you know what I mean?
It's so much fun to shoot. It's like, cool. You know, I don't like to get wrapped in a box, but like at the same time, like if I could shoot dance the rest of my life, I totally would. It's awesome.
It's also like dancers are so fun and cool.
Yeah, they're the best.
Yeah, it's just like, oh, what if you spent all day hanging out with like energetic, great looking athletes who are all like 25 and like living their dream?
Yes.
That sounds pretty fun. That's a vibe that you can just like absorb all day, you know? That's pretty great.
Yeah.
They're always the coolest.
When you're scrolling through TikTok and you're just like watching all these dances, I think as a commercial director, I'm like, ooh, how can I make a commercial that's as engaging as this dance thing? And even this, I have a shoot in a couple weeks where I'm trying to cast, there's just a bunch of extras at a hotel, but I'm trying to cast dancers play the extras, and then maybe bring a choreographer on to just help run them, just so that they're moving in interesting ways. It's kind of like a stylized, like walk through a hotel.
I use movement coaches all the time. Like anytime I can afford one, really. Not that, especially if it's something that you need precise. Like, I mean, I just did a job and like, we were just moving a sponge around, but the sponge had to hit at a certain exact time and it had to move like smoothly. And little things like that where like, okay, the guy has a great smile, but like he has no rhythm. He can't go with the camera. He doesn't understand A, B, C. Like we need this done in a 4 count. And that stuff really matters when you're dealing with 30 seconds. I also think that like my biggest gripe with the whole TikTok like dance that every like ad agency wants to do is that like no one like your TikTok dance, if it's marketed as a TikTok dance, like with your song or whatever, like that's not really what's going viral. That's not organic at all.
Sure.
And that stuff gets like sniffed out. And like one of my opinions, especially this happens in music videos too, they'll be like, we need a TikTok moment. And it's like, no, like we need to do choreography that's fucking dope and that people want to go make on TikTok. We don't want to make like that. Like if we can do a move that no one's seen before, it's going to show up on TikTok. If we're doing a move that looks like TikTok, people are going to call it whack, And so it's like such a hard line to balance, but yeah. And yeah, anyway.
Yeah. Very much
or
in line
just
with what you were telling me.
Murder doll. Sorry, we stepped on each other's jokes there. What was yours?
Oh yeah. It's very in line with what you were telling me earlier today about the GOAT creative directors and that Matt had sent me some article that I didn't read, but I guess it was about how every creative director is like heard their kids use the term GOAT.
Basically, creative directors, especially executive creative directors, are all like middle-aged, and they're like, "What are the kids like?" And they hear their kids say "GOAT." This is a couple of years old now. And so as a result, all of a sudden, every commercial for that year is puns about goats, right? And it's exactly the same as like, my kid won't get off TikTok.
Yeah.
Making me do dances. So that's what must sell, right? Without truly understanding it or internalizing it. Right. And then everything is TikTok dances, right? Yeah.
Yeah. No, totally.
Well, I guess just to get a tiny bit back to the promoting yourself as a director and kind of your career and tying everything up with a bow. How did you end up in art class?
Yeah, so honestly, my music video rep, Tommy LeBout, reached out and said, you got to meet Kirsten. He's known her forever. And, they're interested in signing you. I just left London Alley. Love those guys. Yeah, I love those guys.
Nina Meredith, right? Or not Nina Meredith. Hannah Lux Davis.
Yeah. And I love those guys, but it wasn't exactly, it wasn't working as much as I wanted to be working, and we parted ways, good terms. And so I went over with Kirsten and met with Gino. And, what I really liked about art class was just to selflessly promote myself. It didn't have an overwhelming roster. Like I was like, they can't forget about me here. There's only 10 of us, you know what I mean? And then I really felt like they were doing work that I liked, but also that I had a very different reel than most of the directors there. And so I was like, okay, like I'm not like behind Hannah and Chris and like the 6 other directors that also do dance videos and music videos. Like I'm kind of the one guy here that has deep music video experience, and I can hopefully like stand out in that way.
Yeah, we talk about it on the show all the time. There's that thing of like, sometimes you want to go to a shop that they're known for what you do, but
like Hungry Man for comedy.
Like Hungry Man, yeah, for us, right? Yeah, that would be awesome, but we would be at the bottom of that list. Everybody else at Hungry Man is incredible, and so look, I'm not above taking some sloppy seconds or sloppy 15ths, maybe. But you got to be Hungry Man. You got to be the name in the game in order for that model to work, or you could be the dance guy at a shop that's got an eclectic mix of people, but you want to be the number one dance guy. And I can shoot more than dance, but that's right. But that's the bridge in, and then they're like, okay, you do a dance video, or maybe you do dance and comedy, or what, you find those hybrids of the stuff that you want to work into. Right. But everybody's got to figure out how to sell you to begin with, and then you can grow from there. Right.
For sure.
And they're really good. The art class reps are really good at taking Daniel. He's a music video director that's shot a lot of dancing, and turning him into Daniel. He's a director that's worked a ton with celebrities. He's worked in every country. He's shot dynamic camera, colorful things, fast moving, energetic stuff, like youth culture, with like a touch of humor and like some winks and personality. And then that opens you up to like,
Everything.
so many more spots.
Right. And it means a lot that it's like pretty easy to get somebody on the phone. Like if I need to talk, you know what I mean? It's just like, like it does, suck when you can't get through to someone you feel like should be returning your calls and stuff like that. And I feel like everybody, our class gets back to me, and that's always really nice.
Yeah. It's such it's a weird thing, because they don't want to talk to you. They don't want to have the conversation with you where you're like, why am I not working right now?
Right.
But when you are in a good fit, then either they have a really good answer or you actually are working, or it's like, oh, don't worry. You're like about to shortlist on like 3 different things. We're just working out your schedule,
For sure.
So awesome. Well, congrats on all the success. I'm glad you came to LA.
Thanks. Me too. And
they have beaches in Virginia, Daniel.
They do.
And they're warmer, honestly.
Yeah, no, I'm from like Norfolk, like right next to Virginia Beach. So
yeah, my grandparents were in Virginia Beach. So yeah.
Oh yeah.
Where can listeners check out your work and keep track of all the cool stuff that you're doing?
Yeah, honestly, Instagram at Daniel Russell X. Russell, 2 S's, 2 L's, ends with an X. So Daniel Russell X. That's the best place to sort of follow me and see what's up. Or you can check out my website, www.daniel-russell.com.
Killer. Awesome. Well, do you have a minute or 2 more to endorse with us?
Yes.
Heck yeah.
Unpaid endorsements.
There's a movie that's been on my watch list for a long while that I feel pretty confident that I'm going to love, and I just haven't found a moment to watch it. It's called Humanist Vampire Seeking Consenting Suicidal Person. Do you guys know this movie?
Mm-mm.
It's about like a young woman who's a vampire. She's, the joke is that she's like in her 70s, but, has the body of a 20 something who is like really moody and angsty and doesn't want to eat people. And then falls in love with the quirky guy who's like depressed and is elected to be eaten by her, basically. So it's kind of like a, macabre, sardonic, a little bit twee comedy with a vampire twist that people love. And I'm very excited for it. Came out in 2023. I believe it's French. I'm not sure, but it's on Mubi. So I either have to rent the movie or just bite the bullet and get Mubi. I haven't decided what I'm going to do. Now, the substance is a SAG screener, so that makes it more likely that I'm just gonna rent it. But I'll let you all know. But it's been on a lot of people's watch lists. I'm excited for it. Humanist Vampire Seeking Consenting Suicidal Person. We'll see.
Cool.
Fingers crossed, guys. It's a little bit of a weird one, Daniel, since I haven't actually watched it. But what you got?
I saw a Rolls Royce. I think I might.
Yeah.
I bet they're fun to drive. I don't know. I'm not really a car guy.
It's shameless plug, right?
Yeah. Shameless plug. Go for it. Yeah.
Okay.
Unpaid endorsement.
Okay.
Unpaid endorsement.
So,
yeah.
Unpaid endorsement. So, in between jobs this last year, I actually started shooting vertical soap opera series, K-dramas.
Sure.
And
Join the
I
club, man.
actually, yeah,
that's where the party is at.
I actually kind of started to enjoy the format a lot. And I recently released one called The Virgin's Bucket List on Real Short. It's about a high school football player. It's YA. There's plenty of love and romance, but I did some cool things with the camera. And for a vertical, I'm quite proud of it. So my shameless plug, grab some popcorn, snuggle up with your significant other and check out The Virgin's Bucket List on Real Shorts.
So we've talked about this a little bit. So Real Shorts is one of the big ones though, right? So it's microtransactions, right? Like basically every minute or so, minute and a half, you're like, I got to find out what happens next.
Yes.
That's the format. Cool, man. That's cool.
Yeah. I don't know if it's cool, but I'm proud of that one. So yeah, check it out.
It's cool if you're proud of it, right?
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Well, Kaplan, what you got? Or Daniel, do you have more? Not to put you on the spot. No. Okay.
Yeah. And just for the record, it's not really shameless plugs. It's more like things that we like that we're not being paid for.
Oh, got it.
Unpaid endorsement.
Well, I'll throw one out. I just don't know how cliche this is, but
That's okay.
I'm a huge fan of Pura Vida. Honestly, I'm not a vegan. They make vegan pies. It's, in my opinion, the best pie in Los Angeles. So if you're in the mood for a pie and you're in the WeHo area, check it out. Don't worry that it's vegan. It is delicious.
Well, Matt is a vegetarian and his wife is actually a pie baking champion.
That's true. That's true. And also,
and by pie, I meant pizza. I want to be clear about that.
No. I love pie. What's funny, I don't know if you realize this, Oren, but the one that placed in KCRW has a pie baking contest that's quite serious and pretty big. She won for a vegan pie, actually.
Oh yeah, I think you mentioned that.
Jonathan Gold gave her award. I don't know if I told you that.
Also, shout out all the DJs at KCRW. I mean, thank you.
That's true. Yeah.
Thank you so much. There's nothing I like more than turning on KCRW at 12:30 and just finding out what is up. It always makes me happy.
Yeah, Daniel's morning, it's a little more eclectic thanks to them. KCR joke.
How I find my off ramps. Kai Rizdal.
Yeah.
I was, we've talked about this, that my favorite website on earth is YouTube, and I was watching Severance, the first season, and the opening shot is with Adam Scott, and he's running through all these hallways. It's insane. It's a 4-minute oneer. And I kind of was doing that thing where you're watching the show, but also on your phone while you're watching it. So when I do that, at the end, I have to read the summary, a recap of what happened in that episode, just to make sure I didn't miss anything on a show like Severance. And I happened to find this Vanity Fair. They have directors and actors break down scenes sometimes. So I was watching Ben Stiller and Adam Scott break down the opening sequence of Severance, which was mildly interesting. It's kind of exactly the way you think they did it. They shot it over the course of 50 days and all these invisible cuts and a lot of CG, but it's really cool. But it accidentally auto fed me the next Vanity Fair video, which was called When the Jump Scare is Actually Clever. And it's this 20-minute video about the evolution of jump scares. And I found it to be really interesting because a lot of it is about how you just how jump scares that worked in the 40s don't work in the 60s and don't work in the 80s. And
interesting.
And all these new elements that people everyone knows when somebody's going to close the mirror, there's going to be a monster there. So now you subvert that, right? You close the mirror and then an arm shoots through the mirror and shatters it. It made me think about how as a filmmaker, we find references and we find tropes and we find all these cool things. And our job, if we care at all about advancing the medium, is just finding new ways to do classic things. It's a really good example of it, when the jump scare is actually clever. So it's on YouTube, Vanity Fair.
Yeah, sounds good.
That's dope.
Check it out. Yeah, sounds really great.
Cool.
Awesome.
Well, if you have something you want to tell us about, you can email us at justshootitpod@gmail.com. And you can find us. You can find us on Instagram, basically at justshootitpod. I'm at @okaplan.
And I'm at Mr. Matt Enlow across all social media. This episode was edited by Kevin O. Yang, thanks Kevin, and produced by Tyler Small. And you're listening to music provided by the Free Music Archive and the artist Jahzzar. Thanks everyone. Goodbye.
Bye.